Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I'm going to do my October book haul. And my October book haul, as per usual, is a little bit ridiculous. Not entirely my fault. A lot of it is my fault though. But I swear I am trying to bring in fewer books. Just didn't really happen this month. So the TBR continues to grow, but I have at least read some of these books or have started on some of these books. There's a lot to get through. I believe my last count was 18. It happens. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. My first stack is going to be books that were sent to me by publishers for review. Some of these I requested and some of these were actually sent unsolicited. Sometimes unsolicited books can be really hit or miss, but there's some really awesome stuff in this stack. So I'm gonna try to organize this by publisher to make things a little bit easier, but there's a lot here. The very first book that I have to show you is one that is very, very exciting. This is one of my few 2020 books. It comes out in March of 2020, and that stack does seem to be growing a little bit, which is very exciting. There are a couple of 2020 books in here. This is a YA book, one that I'm really looking forward to. This is Havenfault by Sarah Holland. Now, Sarah Holland wrote a book called Everless and its sequel Evermore. I have read Everless. I heard some iffy things about Evermore, so I've not actually gotten around to that, but I did really enjoy Everless. I think I read it just before my wedding. Like, I read it on the train up to Edinburgh for my wedding. So I have really good kind of like memories and stuff associated with that book. It was really fun. I really liked the concept. So basically, this character lives in a world where time is used as a currency, so people are basically bled dry. Their lives are bled from them in order to sort of buy food and live, ironically. And our main character goes and lives on this massive estate as a servant. This one looks very different, actually. This looks really fun. I'm really looking forward to this. So this, I believe, it doesn't say really much here, but I believe this takes place sort of half in the modern world and half not in the modern world, and there's this kind of house that leads to these sort of ancient magic realms. I don't have a lot of ideas about what this book is about, but I'll go ahead and link a description to it down below because it sounds like it's going to be a really, really good one. So a huge thanks to Bloomsbury for sending me this. This comes out in March of 2020 here in the UK. Next book that I have is another YA fantasy, and I've actually already read this. This is the very first book that I've read in November, so you'll be able to see more of my thoughts in that wrap-up. But from Penguin Books, coming out in November, we have The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. She is an author that seems to be really divisive here on BookTube. She is someone who people either love or really do not love, and I think she's best known for her retellings. So this is a retelling of Arthurian legend. Then we have The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which is a retelling of Frankenstein. And there's also the And I Darken books. I can't remember what the trilogy is called, but they are a kind of gender-swapped Vlad the Impaler retelling, which sounds awesome. I really need to read those. But this one is her newest, and it comes out in mid-November in the UK, and I believe in the US as well, and it is a really interesting one. So basically it is sort of the Arthurian legend as you may know it. It's very familiar, but there is a twist. Guinevere is not Guinevere. The actual Guinevere has died many years ago, and Merlin has sent a kind of a witch, a sorceress, in her place to marry Arthur and protect him from magical threat. Arthur is aware of this, he knows what's going on, but of course magic has been banned in Camelot, so if anyone finds out that she is a witch and that Arthur has married a witch, it could completely undo all of the good work that he is doing. So this was really fun. I really enjoyed this. I am probably going to end up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think I'm also going to do a full review of this book as well, so keep an eye out for that. This one comes out from Delacourt Press, which is an imprint of Penguin. Next, I've got a book that you have seen on my November TBR, which is linked down below if you are curious. This is one that should be really interesting. I believe it's the last in a trilogy, or what will be a trilogy, and it should be fun because I liked the first book, I hated the second book, and I have very high hopes for this one. So this is The Sky Weaver by Kristen Cicerelli. This takes place in a world in which there are dragons, and dragons are kind of keepers of old stories. They have long since been hunted, and our first character in the first book, Asha, is a dragon slayer. In the second book, we follow a girl who sort of marries into royalty, and she is a brilliant tactician, or she's supposed to be, she's not actually. And this one, we follow a girl named Saphir, who is, I believe, Asha's cousin, and the Sky Weaver is a figure from legend. There is an artifact called the Sky Weaver's Knife, which presumably is going to tie into this book as well. I really like the way that Kristen Cicerelli builds this world and this mythology. I really enjoy her writing, and I enjoy the majority of her characters as well. I really liked the plot of The Last Namsara. A lot of my issues with The Caged Queen, which is the second book, is that it's one of those books where all of the conflict could have been resolved in 5 minutes if they had a conversation, which is like the trope that makes me want to like punch through walls. So I had a big problem with that one, but this looks like it's gonna be really promising. I'm very excited to read this. I loved Saphir as a sort of side character in the first book, and I'm really looking forward to reading her own story. Next up, I have 2 books from Orbit, and one was unsolicited and one I did actually request. So the unsolicited book is one that looks really, really fascinating. This is The Pursuit of Willie and Abby by Claire North. Claire North is an author I've been wanting to read for a really long time. I have another one of her books that was sent to me by Orbit called The Game House, which looks like a lot of fun. I've just not managed to get around to her yet, but this looks really, really great. I don't know a huge amount about this book, which is currently, I believe, out now. You can go ahead and pick it up, but I believe it combines history. It takes place in the 19th century with magic, and that's something that I love so much. So this is very high on my list of priorities. I'm very, very excited to read this. And then Orbit were very, very kind and sent me one of my most highly anticipated books of the year. I'm so excited to read Realm of Ash by Tasha Suri. I loved Empire of Sand, which was her debut novel, which came out last year, and it's one of those books that I think has made a lasting impression. There are a lot of, especially when you read a ton of books like I do, you know, you can like a book and then it maybe like will fade from your mind a little bit, which is one of the reasons that I am now rating books long after I read them instead of doing my kind of immediate reaction. And Empire of Sand was the opposite. I read it and I liked it. I think I rated it 4 stars. It was a little bit more of a slow burn book than I was expecting, and I did kind of have some difficulty reading it because of that, because I was not expecting a slow burn book. But it's one of those that's really stuck in my mind, and it's just become better and better and better as I get further and further from it. I'd actually like to reread it. I do not reread books almost ever, and I would really love to reread it. So with all of that said, I am of course super excited for Realm of Ash. It is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a sequel, but it is definitely a companion novel to the first book. In the first book we follow Mare, and in the second book we follow her little sister Arwa. And in the first book I think she's under 10, and in this one she is 20. She's in her 20s. And I've flicked through a little bit of this so far, as I say in my November TBR, which this book is on, and it just looks like it's going to be fantastic. Arwa is going to be another amazing character from Tasha Suri, another amazing female character, and I love the magic and the world. It's just absolutely beautiful. So if you haven't picked up her books and you like adult fantasy, definitely pick these up. Empire of Sand has the best slow burn romance I've probably ever read. If that is appealing to you, then you should definitely pick it up. I'm very excited for Realm of Ash. This comes out in mid-November. Again, I'll put the date on the screen. And last of all, for books sent to me by publishers, Tor Books treated me very well this month. So I requested 2 of these books and 2 were unsolicited. So the very first book that I did request is Robert Jordan's Warrior of the AltHi. I love Robert Jordan. I love his books so much. I love Wheel of Time. It's one of my favorite series, even though I'm not done with it yet. Stuck on book 10. We're gonna get there one day. So this is his first unpublished book. It was the first book that was bought by a publisher, and he kind of set it aside in order to work on Wheel of Time, and of course he very tragically passed away while he was writing that series, and Brandon Sanderson finished it up. So this has now been published for the very first time, and I'm really excited to read this. I've heard some kind of mixed things about it. If you love Robert Jordan, you're probably gonna love it. You'll be able to see some of the ideas for Wheel of Time in this book that became fully fledged in his other series. It's apparently not as strong as those books, but it's apparently a really, really fun read. I'm so looking forward to this. This is available now. It came out in October if you're interested in picking it up, and it's a beautiful book. So on the inside, the end papers are a full colored map. The front of the book, I'm kind of doing this one-handed, sorry. The front of the book, I don't know if you can see it, it's got his embossed signature on it. It's a gorgeous book. I'm really excited to read it. I'm very curious to see what I think. Continuing on with my Tor books, I also received a copy of The Infinite Noise by Laura Shippen. This is her first book, and it is based on her podcast called The Bright Sessions. This came unsolicited. I actually have not heard of this book. I had not heard of this podcast, anything like that, but it looks really, really good. If you have seen my November TBR, you will see that this book is actually on that TBR. So I'm really looking forward to this because it sounds like it's got some X-Men vibes, X-Men in high school kind of vibes. So you have our main character named Caleb, and he's very kind of normal teen. He plays football, he does all the stuff, and it turns out that he is something called atypical, which means that he has enhanced abilities. However, his enhanced ability is extreme empathy. He feels the emotions of everyone around him. So being an empath in high school is not exactly easy, I'm sure, but he gets kind of involved with this classmate named Adam, and Adam has kind of these big feelings. He must be like me. He feels a lot of feelings. So they kind of get entangled, and I'm sure it's about their kind of relationship. But we also have his therapist named Dr. Bright, who seems like she knows more about kind of what's going on with being atypical than he does. So this looks really great. This looks really fun. Again, this is from Tor Books, and I believe this is actually out now. I'll double check. If it's not, I'll put the release date on the screen. But this looks really fun. I'm surprised I haven't heard of this because it sounds very much like my jam. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. So the next book that I have is another unsolicited one. This is another I hadn't heard of, but it does look really interesting. This is Game Changer, and it's by L.X. Beckett. According to the back, it is sort of has shades of Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, which is actually not a book I've read, but I've got on the shelf, typical. But this looks like a kind of futuristic kind of technology, government-y type thing. I don't know if that made any sense, but I actually don't know much about this one, but it looks really interesting to me, so I will go ahead and fit this in the TBR as soon as I can. I don't think that this is their first book. I don't think that this is a debut, so there may be a chance that you have read something by them before. I would be very curious to hear if you have. And the very last book that I have from publishers is one that I'm super, super pumped for. I was lucky enough to get a proof copy of this book, which comes out in 2020, and it looks just so fantastic. So this is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. Again, this is another one from Tor Books. So this comes out on the 20th of February of next year, and it says that this is the start of an epic new series, perfect for fans of Joe Abercrombie and Robin Hobb. I'm really pumped for this one. So this follows a girl who's been raised since birth in a cult steeped with old magic, and on her 4th birthday she's going to be sacrificed to their gods. However, she is offered a chance to escape her fate. A sorcerer wants her for his assistant, his sword hand, and his assassin. As this involves her not dying on her 14th birthday, she accepts. So she spends years of her life living on a knife's edge, helping her master hunt for an artifact that would change many worlds, worlds. Then comes the day she has been dreading. They encounter her old cult, seeking the same artifact, and she is forced to reckon with her past. This sounds like it has it all. It's got assassins, it's got cults, it's got mysterious wizards, it's got strong lady characters. Like, this sounds really, really, really good. I am very excited to read this one. It does look like it's a little bit of a longer book. It's got tiny type as well. So this will probably be one that I read either over Christmas or in January for the new year, but I'm really, really looking forward to this. It looks so good and I've heard great things about it so far. Right, so the next stack of books that I've got here is mostly the result of Galance Fest, which happened in October. It's a whole day of Galance authors. There's lots of panels. It takes place at Foyles, which is one of my favorite bookshops, which is also near Forbidden Planet, which is another amazing bookshop. So some of these I bought at Galance Fest, like some of the authors were there. Some of these I bought at Forbidden Planet, and then I have a couple of other things. So I'm gonna get started when I can like detangle myself from this pile of books and not knock them over. So these first 3 books I got at Galance Fest. They're all authors who were there and who talked on panels. So this first book is one that I've wanted for a really long time because it ties itself into one of my favorite movies. And if you've seen my Galance Fest vlog, then you will see that I talk about this movie a lot and this book a lot, and I am so pumped. This is The Thing Itself by Adam Roberts. The Thing is one of my favorite movies, the 1982 or whatever version of it, and I love that film, and we had just happened to have seen it the day before Galance Fest. We had like this spooky movie marathon that me and Scottish husband and my sister do. We were staying over at her place, so we watched a couple of spooky movies, and The Thing was one of them on my recommendation. Fortunately, they loved it. I don't have to like end my family or something like that. This looks super cool, and I've not really heard anything about it. I think it's actually an older book, but it only just came to my attention recently. It's a 2015 book, and from what I can tell, this book follows a group of researchers on an Arctic base, or an Antarctic base, I should say, and they have seen the film The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. However, The Thing is actually possibly real, so it sounds super meta and it sounds really cool. If you've read this, let me know, because I don't know if that understanding of this book is even remotely accurate, but it sounds awesome. I am so looking forward to this. It's gonna be a great like winter book because of the setting and because of like, you know, everything that has to do with The Thing being set in Antarctica and everything. I'm so pumped for this. I love that movie so much. It's one of my favorites. It's just so good. So this is definitely high on my list of things to read this winter. Then I've got We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. This is a debut novel. I think it came out in August or so. And I've seen this around, I've heard really good things about it, but the reason that I picked it up is because he was on a panel and everyone was kind of introducing themselves and talking about their books. And he said, oh, my book is about what happens if the bad guys win. And I like shot up out of my seat and I was like, yes, please, I need that. That's like one of my favorite kind of plots in fantasy. So this looks amazing. I don't know a huge amount about it otherwise, but a lot of my adult fantasy blogging friends are really loving this book, and he was the nicest person in the world, which always encourages me to buy books and read books. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. It sounds really awesome. If you want to learn more about it, there's a link down in the description. The next book that I have, I also bought because the author is incredibly lovely on social media, and he was also at Galance Fest. This is Song of the Sycamore by Edward Cox. This is one that I didn't know a huge amount about, again, before actually going to Galance Fest, but it sounds really interesting. So it sounds like it's about a man who dies out on the hostile plains of this like wasteland as a casualty of war, but he somehow returns to his old home city and he's brought back something from the wasteland, something old and best forgotten. So the spirits are calling it Sycamore, an ancient entity out to avenge all victims of murder, which sounds awesome. And in his city like Oldcastle, which is the city where he is returned to, no one is innocent. This sounds really great. I haven't heard a lot about this one, but it's another one that the few things I have heard have been really positive, and I really like Ed. It's a long book, So this might be one for the winter as well, maybe after the year has finished, so that I can go ahead and hit my Goodreads goal. But this sounds really great. I'm super curious to learn a little bit more about it. While at Glance Fest, I also picked up 3 books from Forbidden Planet in the break in between panels. So the very first one is Song for a New Day by Sarah Pinsker. I believe this is about a kind of version of our future in which, in order to stop the spread of disease and terrorist attacks, people are no longer allowed to congregate in sort of large crowds. And so this obviously affects things like music and concerts. So this kind of takes that concept and expands upon how people will kind of deal with not being able to gather any longer. And I'm sure it has a lot more to do with that. There's like illegal concerts and illegal gatherings and things like that. This is one that when I interviewed Emma Newman on our podcast that I do with my sister, which I'll link down below, she said she was reading at the time, and it's kind of stuck in my head ever since then, and so I'm very curious about this one. And of course I love her books, so I'm definitely going to take her recommendations. So this sounds like a really great one, maybe a little bit more, not literary, but maybe a little bit less sci-fi or fantasy-esque than I am used to, so this might be one to wait on a little bit, but I'm very excited for this. The next book that I have on my stack here is one that I didn't even realize was out yet. For some reason I thought this was out in January, and I don't really know why, but I was really thrilled to see it on the shelves at Forbidden Planet. This is War Girls by Tochi Onyebuchi. He wrote a book called Beasts Made of Night, which is a fantasy book, and this is actually a science fiction book. I have Beasts Made of Night on my shelf and I haven't read it yet, which is really typical of me, but I'm very, very excited to read that and also read this because I've heard really good things. This book takes place in a kind of future in which sort of climate change and sort of humans being horrible have rendered the Earth inhabitable. So people have left to colonies in space. However, there are many people who have been left behind, and our main characters are among those people. I believe they become child soldiers in a war, and we kind of skip ahead 4 years later and see them seeking revenge. So another one I don't know a huge amount about. I don't think I've seen anyone actually review this, but I've seen it in a lot of kind of hauls and TBRs and things like that. So I'd be very curious to go ahead and read this and see what I think. I'd like to get to this really soon, but we'll see what happens. And the last book that I have that I bought that day is a bind-up of 3 novellas, one of which I had already read, and I reread in the month of October. So I really want to get to the rest of them, and I definitely will soon. This is the Binti Trilogy by Nnedi Okorafor. I read the first book back in, I think, 2017, and I recently reread it. So they're very short novellas, and they're absolutely lovely. They're gorgeous science fiction novellas following a girl named Binti, who's the first of her people to go off to this very prestigious university, and the things that happen to her along the way. That does absolutely no justice to how incredible this novella is, and I'm super excited to read the rest of them. I think that this is going to be a favorite when I finish it. We'll see. And then I have a couple of just sort of stray books. So the next one is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This is the last book that I needed to complete my British hardcover Harry Potter collection, because of course I have my American editions from when I was younger, and I decided that I was going to try to collect all of the British hardcovers as well. This is the last one that I needed. I kept rebuying Order of the Phoenix. I don't know why, so I had like 2 copies of that for a while. Got rid of one of them, finally have my last one, so I've completed my collection. The next thing that I'm going to do is hunt down all of the Wheel of Time hardcovers, because I need a project when I go into used bookstores. So I'm very, very happy I finally got this. The next 2 books I picked up off of that infamous free bookshelf that I have at work. They are books that I don't know a huge amount about, but I've heard really good things about. Very different genres. So this first one is Clean by Juno Dawson, which is a YA contemporary book, which is not usually my thing, but is all about drug addiction and rehab, and it's meant to be really, really, really good. So I'm very excited about this. I've been wanting to read Juno's books for a long time because she's such an amazing advocate. So this is going to be the place that I start. I also have The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. This was the Man Booker winner in 2013, which is back when I actually cared about the Man Booker Prize, and I've been wanting to read this for ages. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. I think it's 800 some odd pages in this. So I don't know when I'm going to get to this, but I've been wanting to read it for a long time. It takes place in New Zealand, and I believe there's like unsolved and mysterious crimes and all these strange characters and their stories interweaving. I have no idea, but it looks really good. I think my mum's read it and said that she really liked it. I'll need to double check with her, but it's one that I've been wanting to get my hands on for a long time, and I finally got it. So those are all of the books that I hauled in the month of October. It's a lot more than I had wanted to haul in October, but it happens. I am hopefully going to bring in a lot less books in November, preparing for Christmas because my family and I tend to go a little wild with book buying, either for each other or after Christmas in a mad book buying frenzy. So I also have this thing that I've been doing all year that I think I've mentioned previously, where I put £1 away every time I finish a book, so hopefully I should have another 100 quid or so to spend on books after Christmas as well. So hopefully November will be a little bit lighter in terms of book hauling because I've got a lot of stuff coming in December and January. I would love to know in the comments below if you have read any of these books, if you hauled any amazing books yourself, or if any of these are in your TBR. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.